On this episode of the show, I have with me Vinayak Kumar. He is CTO of Lynx, and we're going to be talking about defining what doesn't work, trying to not reinvent the wheel, and where do you weave in innovation? So we're going to be talking a lot about his approaches to building a team, focusing on those current skill sets, dealing with future work, cookie cutter approaches. Should we use them? Should we not use them? We're going to talk to Vinayak about all these different things. I'm super excited to have you on the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we dive into some of the project and team building methodologies, tell us what Lynx does.
So Lynx is a startup. It was started about 4 years ago. I've been there since its inception, and Lynx is really at the crossroad of healthcare and banking and financial industry. So we do a lot of payment. We're streamlining payment processing. So we do consumer-directed accounts, consumer-directed health accounts like HSAs, FSAs. We'll also do stacked cards. So there's a multitude of things that we do to essentially streamline the entire healthcare and finance process, or applying finance to healthcare, essentially. So that's what we do. It's a small company, 4 years. We've been in business for 4 years, and it's going pretty well so far.
Awesome. All right, so this episode's going to be centered a little bit around team building, a little bit of project methodology, and obviously maybe where I'd like to start is where do you weave in innovation, right? As a CTO, obviously, I'm sure you're on all sorts of customer calls, hearing what people are interested in, teams discovering new ways to solve things. I guess as a CTO, when you think of innovation, I guess just what do you think about innovation? I know everyone wants to innovate, but also it does come at a cost.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I've been in companies, if you see my resume, you'll see I've been in a lot of large companies. And a lot of times, these companies will want to innovate, right? What is innovation? Bringing in a new idea, trying out a new thing. But a lot of these large companies have so much baggage, so much. They're so risk averse that in the end, it doesn't really go anywhere, right? And so we have that advantage. We're a small startup, and we can pretty much turn the wheel, at a minute's notice. And the second part is, innovate. You can't just say let's innovate, right? I mean, you don't. That does not. That's not how it works. The way it works is it has to be in the culture. So it has to come from top down, and it has to be sort of the fabric of your company when you talk about innovation. So in the company, I don't think we use the term innovation at all. We never use it, but we are doing new things all the time, right? And it's sort of embedded in the whole ethos of the company. Yeah. So and innovation doesn't mean come up with a brand new product or a groundbreaking idea. Innovation can also mean you have a process that works, you tweak a few things, and it works better, right? So it could be as mundane as doing a build process. Hey, listen, I want to do this a little faster, or a little smarter. Can we do this? Yeah, sure. Let's try this on. And so we do that all the time, every day, 24/7. So I think that's really speaks well for the kind of company we are. It's sort of inbuilt in the culture. So we don't talk much about it. We just do it in the end. And that's really what I felt that large companies, they try to do it. I think the heart's in the right place, but there's just too much baggage and there's too much resistance to change.
Absolutely. When you mentioned innovations, within the fabric of the company, so obviously no one is going out saying, "Well, I'm going to innovate." I don't think really I agree with you. Innovation doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
When you think about what's happened within the fabric of the company, do people just solve problems? Are they looking for opportunities to, bring in advanced technologies? So when innovation does happen, I guess my question is, how does it happen? Is it organic? It's just, hey, we had a problem, we just solved it, and it's turned out to be an innovation? Or is it a case of, let's say we have a problem, is there more advanced solutions?
That's a great, again, another great question, right? So we don't go looking for a problem that a technology can solve. right? You don't come up with the technology first and then say, oh, wait a minute, I've seen that happen so many times. It's a recipe for failure. You can't pick a technology and then say, I'm going to solve a problem using this technology, right? You don't have a problem to solve. So yeah, so if there is a problem, and I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to, you want to make your data available to consumers, right? Now there's a problem. Now how do you solve it, right? And okay, you know what? I probably need a data warehouse or a data lake kind of a solution, right? So that's where your innovation comes into picture, right? So now you're going to pick the technology that actually is best suited to solve that data distribution problem, versus saying, hey, Databricks or whatever is a great piece of technology. Let's invent a problem to use that technology in our company. It doesn't quite work that way, right? So even AI, right? It's all over the place right now, right? And it's not technology for the problem; it's problem for the technology, right? So we have problems which we'll use AI to solve, rather than the other way around. But if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, this is a great tool here, and it could help us do this stuff," I'll take that call, because it sounds like there's a problem, and we need a tool to solve it, and then you identify the tool. Cart before the horse kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I guess I wasn't going to dive into AI, but out of curiosity, I'm going to go down that path for a quick second. Do you think, and again, I used this analogy on a recording a week ago about, obviously you can have a hammer and a fly swatter, and you got to pick the right tool, right? And do you think are we going through a period where people are trying to look for innovation, and in this case, they're trying to find ways to make AI work in their company because they feel everyone else is? I mean, are we seeing that, or is it just a lot of noise, and that's what it feels like to me, maybe?
I personally, right, and I personally think that it's technology in search of a problem in many cases. This is what happened with blockchain when it came out.
Yes.
Every device is going to have it. Everything is going to have blockchain. It never quite materialized that way. And AI to a lesser extent. I mean, the potential is quite endless. You just have to identify where it applies, but it's not one size fits all. There's no real need to solve your day-to-day issues with AI. If natural intelligence can do it better, then there's no need to do artificially, right? So that's really, you really need to identify the niche where it applies and then apply it to its fullest. But I do think that there are companies that just want to say they use AI. If you see the name of companies, like .ai, they're kind of marketing that they do AI, but what is the real problem that you're solving?
Absolutely. 100%. I guess when you're looking at your team, and obviously you mentioned your startup, you guys innovate organically. Obviously, you're tackling problems. Plenty of problems are popping up within the startup world. What are you potentially looking at, not trying to reinvent the wheel or touch or look for a cookie cutter solution because maybe the value or the ROI is not there, and you don't want to actually, obviously, deal with yourselves?
Yeah. So when we solve a problem, so I'll give you an example, multi-phase. So we utilize a lot of like external systems, and we're committing transactions to each one of these, and then we're solving this problem. And now the question is how to make sure that all these things are consistent, right? If I do this, I have to do this. If I don't do this, I have to roll this back, that kind of thing. And when we solved that problem, we came up with a solution. It was not just a solution. We will try to, for lack of a better term, patternize it. And put it in a mold. So it's not just a solution, it's a pattern now. Okay. And then we have plenty of opportunities where we will encounter the same problem again, in the context of this company, right? And then we're going to just apply that pattern, and that gives us and that's the cookie cutter now. You have this thing, this similar kind of problem, and we're going to just basically use this pattern. It's not necessarily a framework. It's not software, but it's sort of an idea that we know we've applied it here. It works well, and therefore it's going to work in this context, and we have the confidence because it's worked there. And that's what I mean by like a cookie cutter approach. So the first time there was innovation, we built that whole thing, but then we're just going to use it, and maybe we'll find issues with it somewhat, and we'll tweak it and we'll make it better. But really, we want to leverage as much as we can the pattern that we developed, and that's been our mantra, and that's how we've grown so fast, and we've built a lot of stuff in 3 or 4 years. It's because we try to just leverage stuff. We built it once, and we keep milking it as much as possible. And that's what I mean by cookie cutter. It doesn't mean there's no innovation there. There's plenty of sort of opportunities to tweak that and make it better. Or then someone will come and say, hey, listen, I've got a much better way to do this. And okay, let's take a look at that, and we'll try to retrofit this. So yeah, it's not something that's sort of unique to, it's part of, if you talk to a good software architect, you'll find that they'll recommend the same thing, basically, or a good engineer. It's making those boxes and apply them. Yeah,
absolutely. When you look at this balance of, you want innovation to be organic, you don't want to waste time on things that are unnecessary. There's no value add to the company. When you do see tech, and you mentioned AI and the trend in AI, you mentioned blockchain before that. When you guys are as a team trying to tackle and solve these problems, is there a process at which you evaluate a solution to categorize how much risk you're willing to take on for, I guess, the benefits, the ROI of a new technology?
And the thing is, we operate in the financial world, and we also operate in the healthcare world, right? So we are kind of governed by two stringent regulations, really, healthcare and finance, right? So most companies are saddled with one or the other, but we have both of them. So innovation doesn't mean sort of hell for fire, right? Or it doesn't mean you just drop something in brand new without testing. So we have a very rigorous approach where we'll evaluate a solution, we'll evaluate a technology, and we'll say, what are the pros and cons, what are the risks, and number one, have there been security issues with this thing, right? And so because we are a very security conscious company, right? Again, it's healthcare and it's finance, so we've got security sort of has to be the cornerstone, right? It's the foundation. But to your point, yeah, I mean, if we decide to use a data warehouse, for example, then that solves a data lake problem. We're going to evaluate it, different types of data warehouses, different offerings, and we're going to, but the thing is, this evaluation doesn't happen over a period of 3 or 6 months as it would in larger places. We do this over a period of few days, and we'll go through the pros, cons, and we'll say, yeah, okay, and then we'll make a decision, and then we'll stand behind it. Basically, we'll say, yeah, let's do this way, and then we'll basically execute on it. There's not much churning going on after that.
Is there a point, I guess, to kind of continue the workflow? Is there a point in which, if you do see some obstacles, you're gonna wave the white flag, or is it a case of keep going forward and solve the problem? Because we made the decision. I guess how do you approach?
No. Yeah. I mean, you can't, in anything, right? You can't be dogmatic about it, right? So I'm very willing to say, hey, listen, I picked this technology. I thought it would work. I know now, 2 months later, it doesn't. Let's cut our losses and move to a different. It hasn't happened too much, and maybe we were just lucky, or we made really good decisions. But again, culturally, we are a company that, at least I will stand behind something that I pick, and then I'm very willing to say I picked the wrong tool.
Absolutely.
I will
I
stand
guess
on a pedestal and I will say I picked the wrong tool and let's go back and do the other. Yeah.
100%. I guess when you're looking at, when we're talking about innovation in general, in the impact
Mhm.
on your team and skill set. So I guess that the one danger, not danger, the one thing to be solved is, if you are moving into an area where the team has less expertise, right? And it doesn't always happen, but if you happen to move into an area with less expertise, how do you balance your team?
Mhm.
How do you upskill them? How do you add some of that IP? How do you manage that?
Yeah, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge that we wrestle with because again, being small, right? I can't just say 2 years from now I'm going to need you know a TensorFlow developer or whatever, right? And then hire them now, and so it has to be just in time. But in the space that we're in, and in the way we have constituted our teams, right? The team constitution is more. Our teams are self-sufficient in the sense each developer on our team is encouraged, not mandated, but encouraged to do multiple different technologies. So there's a lot of fungibility in our whole developer pool, right? So the same person can do DevOps, can do databases, can do UI, mobile UI, to a lesser extent mobile. But we do encourage people to take on do a small component in mobile, in React.js, and we kind of build it organically as much as possible. And so our developers are very well versed with different technologies now. But does that mean we need a technology? For example, we need, like, for lack of a better word, better example, a database administrator that can fine tune our queries. Yeah, maybe we don't have that skill set, so we'll try to go and hire that. We'll try to identify and we'll try to hire that person. But for the most part, that has not been a problem. Like, we identified we needed some mobile developers, so 3 months before the actual project began, we hired the developers, and we were good to go. And then other people have also picked up mobile. So I think fungibility is the key. Finding the right balance is the key. You can't hire for some future case which may never be realized. At the same time, you can't sort of say, I'm not going to hire until the end moment. So it's a balance that you have to find.
Absolutely. Seems like a lot of art than science.
It's more art than science. You're right. You're right. Yeah, it's more art than science.
I guess when you're looking at the speed of technology development, right? We've seen a couple of those. The cloud came in, it did materialize. Blockchain came in. I agree with you. Still a lot of promise, but it hasn't quite done what it stated. In more advanced technology, we saw self-driving cars. A decade ago, everyone said we're going to see them real soon. We're still not there. We're still waiting for that car just to show up and us to hop in. When you think about AI, and we're talking about innovation, I guess, what are your thoughts? I mean, and how do you, when you do see these type of bigger macro trends, how do you evaluate them? Because obviously you do allude to the fact that sometimes it's a solution in search of a problem. How do you evaluate these big trends and when you should look to jump in?
Good question. I haven't quite, like, one thing is for sure, and in the company as well, right? Is we try to find the problem. The business problem comes first. What is it? And that's the constant. Like, when we present a solution, the first question someone is going to ask internally is, which problem are you trying to solve? What is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And you have this whole elaborate solution, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? And so okay, so you have this AI, you have agentic AI, and what we've actually, and I was talking to somebody last week, is we have identified situations, and these aren't intuitive. There's not very obvious, right? But it's a very non-intuitive process, and we identified a situation where we were doing some things, researching a problem, for example, like researching a production issue. This payment should have been marked as a yes, it's marked as a no. It takes like at least 8 or 9 hours for somebody to actually go through the database, figure out what is what. Now, and then I was reading about agentic AI, and I talked to somebody about agentic AI, and I was mentioning this, and he says, "Oh yeah, you could try building an agent that does something like this and automate that process." And that's how it was born, right? That whole idea. Okay, maybe this is a case where I can. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I give it a shot and see if that agentic AI actually applies to this problem. Now, it's not a problem where we're delivering a new feature using AI. It's a problem more operational, but it saves a lot of time, right? It saves at least 10 hours of a person. So maybe that's a place where you use it. So sometimes these problems are not very obvious. It's not a new feature that you're delivering with AI. It's a non-intuitive problem. And that's pretty much how we never evaluate a solution just for the sake of, because it's a buzzword. We don't do that. We don't do that much. There's a temptation to do that. I will give you that. I have done that. I've done that myself. But we try not to go overboard.
Absolutely, 100%. Vinayak, I wanted to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Great discussion. I'm sure we didn't answer all the questions possible in the topic. If somebody does want to reach out and ask you a follow-up question, what is a good way of doing that?
I think an email is the best way to do it. My email is vinayak@lynx-fh.com, so they can reach out to me there. Or my LinkedIn page, you can reach out to me there, message me, and I'll reply.
Okay, fantastic. We'll definitely include some of those links in the show notes so people can find you. And again, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for the episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, Vinayak walked us through his approaches to innovation, actually when to innovate, when not to innovate, what to look for, dealing with what should be a off the shelf cookie cutter approach versus looking for what that organic solution is. And we even talked about how his team kind of approaches these things from an organic problem solving perspective. So share this with somebody else who might benefit. I thought it was a great episode. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.